What if the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century wasn't just about politics, economics, or imperial ambition? What if it was, at its heart, a family affair? A bitter rivalry between three men bound by blood who held the fate of millions in their hands, three cousins, three emperors, and one world on the brink of collapse. This isn't the history you were taught. This is the story of how a tangled web of royal relationships, personal insecurities, and a fatal inability to communicate plunged the world into a conflict that would redefine humanity. Because sometimes the most devastating secrets aren't hidden in shadows, but in plain sight, woven into the very fabric of power. They called her the grandmother of Europe. Queen Victoria's descendants sat on nearly every major throne across the continent. But none were more prominent or more tragically intertwined than her grandsons: George, the stoic King of England; Wilhelm, the ambitious Kaiser of Germany; and Nicky, the autocratic Tsar of Russia. Cousins, friends, rivals, their personal dynamics would play an undeniable role in the coming storm. Imagine a family reunion where the stakes weren't just awkward conversations, but the fate of empires. These men grew up together, played together, and corresponded frequently. They were family. Their letters, often signed with affectionate nicknames like Willy and Nicky, painted a picture of genuine, if sometimes strained, kinship. Yet, beneath the veneer of royal camaraderie, deep currents of jealousy, misunderstanding, and conflicting national interests were already beginning to churn. The stage was set for a drama of Shakespearean proportions, played out on the global stage. Queen Victoria herself, a master of European diplomacy through marriage, might have inadvertently created the very conditions for conflict by intertwining so many royal houses. Her matchmaking, intended to secure peace, ultimately created a volatile network of personal and political obligations. To understand the war, we must first understand the men. Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, Queen Victoria's first grandson, was a man consumed by a desperate need for recognition. He admired and envied his British relatives, particularly their naval power, yet his attempts to assert Germany's place in the sun often came across as bluster and aggression. His withered left arm, a birth defect, is often cited by historians as a source of deep insecurity, fueling his militaristic tendencies and erratic decision-making. He craved his grandmother's approval, yet often acted in ways that alienated her and his British cousins. His pronouncements were often bombastic, his policies unpredictable, creating an atmosphere of unease across Europe. Across the Channel, King George V of Great Britain was Wilhelm's first cousin. More reserved, more duty-bound, George embodied the traditional British monarch. While he sought to maintain peace, his primary allegiance was to the British Empire, and he would not tolerate challenges to its supremacy. His striking physical resemblance to his Russian cousin Nicholas was often remarked upon, a visual echo of their shared lineage. George was a naval man, disciplined and pragmatic, often exasperated by Wilhelm's theatrics and perceived aggression. He represented the stability and tradition that Wilhelm often seemed to rail against. And in the East, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, also George's first cousin, was a man ill-suited for the immense responsibilities of his throne. Deeply religious, devoted to his family, Nicholas was a weak and indecisive leader, often swayed by his wife and mystical advisors like Rasputin. He clung to autocratic power even as his vast empire teetered on the brink of revolution. His personal charm belied a profound lack of political acumen, making him vulnerable to manipulation and poor judgment. These weren't just heads of state, they were men with human flaws whose personal histories were about to collide with global destiny. The personal rivalries between the cousins mirrored the escalating tensions between their nations. Wilhelm ignited the powder keg. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, triggered a chain reaction that would engulf Europe. In the frantic days that followed, the cousins exchanged desperate personal appeals known as the Willy-Nicky telegrams. These telegrams, written in English, offer a poignant glimpse into their last-ditch efforts to avert catastrophe, bypassing official diplomatic channels in a desperate plea from one family member to another. Wilhelm pleaded with Nicholas to de-escalate, to avoid mobilization, writing, "I foresee that I shall soon be forced, under the pressure of my people, to take measures of which I am now trying to hold back with all my might, and which will lead to a catastrophe." Nicholas, torn between family and national honor, made his own appeals, assuring Wilhelm that his mobilization was not directed at Germany, but against Austria-Hungary. George, watching from London, tried to mediate, sending his own urgent messages to both cousins, urging restraint. But the forces they had helped unleash, the rigid alliance systems, the nationalistic fervor, their own deep-seated distrust, were now beyond their control. The personal bonds of family proved too weak to withstand the immense pressures of empire and ambition. Each telegram, a desperate cry for peace, was met with the inexorable march of war. The final telegrams read like a tragic farewell. Willy to Nicky, Nicky to Georgie. A desperate, last-ditch attempt to avert the inevitable. But the die was cast. The family feud had consumed a continent, and the world plunged into darkness. The Great War tore through their families and their empires with brutal efficiency. Tsar Nicholas II, his empire collapsing under the weight of war and revolution, would be executed with his entire family in 1918, a tragic end to the Romanov dynasty. Kaiser Wilhelm II, his nation defeated and humiliated, would abdicate and live out his days in exile in the Netherlands, a fallen emperor. Only King George V would remain on his throne, though he felt compelled to change his family's German name, Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, to the more British-sounding House of Windsor, to distance himself from his German heritage. The family feud had consumed a continent, and the cost was unimaginable. Millions dead, empires shattered, and a generation scarred forever. But the echoes of this royal family drama didn't end with the armistice. The seeds of resentment, the economic devastation, the punitive peace treaties, and the rise of new, darker ideologies, all were direct consequences of the war the cousins couldn't stop. The Treaty of Versailles, meant to secure peace, instead sowed the seeds of future conflict. And just 2 decades later, the world would plunge into an even greater catastrophe, built on the foundations laid by the First Brother War. The failure of these 3 cousins to avert disaster in 1914 created a vacuum, a fertile ground for the next generation of conflict, proving that history, unlearned, is doomed to repeat itself. While the direct 2 brothers narrative might seem to end with World War I, the underlying theme of personal power, ambition, and the failure of leadership to prevent global catastrophe resonates deeply with the origins of World War II. The unresolved issues, the punitive peace treaties, and the economic turmoil that followed World War I created the perfect storm for the rise of figures like Hitler and the subsequent Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a secret alliance between 2 dictators that carved up Eastern Europe and directly led to the invasion of Poland. The world had not learned its lesson, and the personal failings of the previous generation of leaders had paved the way for even greater horrors. So, while not literal brothers, the spirit of the 2 brothers who started the wars can be seen in the tragic continuity of history. The personal failings of the royal cousins in 1914, their inability to prioritize kinship over empire, created a void that would be filled by even more ruthless leaders just a generation later. The echoes of their family feud reverberated for decades, shaping the destiny of millions. Their story serves as a profound historical lesson that even the most powerful individuals, when blinded by pride and entangled in personal rivalries, can unleash forces beyond their control, with consequences that ripple through generations. The story of George, Wilhelm, and Nicholas is a chilling reminder of how personal dynamics, hidden rivalries, and the failure of leadership can shape global events. Was it fate, or simply human folly, that led these 3 cousins to unleash such devastation? And did their actions or inactions lay the groundwork for an even greater conflict to come? The truth, as always, is complex, layered, and deeply unsettling. History is not merely a collection of dates and battles, but a tapestry woven with human ambition, emotion, and the often unforeseen consequences of personal choices. What do you believe? Did a family feud truly ignite the world? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And for more untold stories, hidden histories, and deep dives into the secrets of the past, subscribe to Obscura Archives and hit the notification bell. Don't miss our next journey into the unknown.